The Sierra Trip. The Sierra Trip, Mark Richards.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. It was May 1978, remember then? I was with my good friends Jeff and Christian. We all piled into Jeff's battered, old, unreliable Toyota Carina and headed off to the Sierra Nevada mountains. We were going to the final of a course that was called Wilderness and Human Survival. In order to receive our final grade, we had to successfully complete a 5-day camping trip in the wilderness. Come with me on our adventure. As we headed up the long, steep road to the top, Jeff's car started to overheat. Back then, cars were much simpler. To cool the engine down, we simply turned on the heater, full blast. And it worked. The next 5, and it worked. Along the way, what we did was, to make the ride more pleasurable, we listened and sang to the Doobie Brothers. When we got to the top, we realized that the teams that were all going to be there, because we were a 3-person, a lot of people had 4-person teams, might run into each other. Well, they were pretty smart. They staggered the start times and even changed some of the courses. We got our bearings and we headed out. The next 5 days would prove to be a true bonding experience for us and a trial of our will to survive. To give you an idea of some of the things we brought with us, beyond the requisite map and compass, I had brought along a canteen that held a half a gallon of water, and it was covered with wool. Why wool? Well, I would dip the water, the canteen, and say, river water. As the water evaporated from the wool, it would cool down drinking water on the inside. Ingenious! Some of the other things that I brought with us were changes of clothing, a deck of cards, dehydrated meals, dried fruit, a headlamp, so we could see at night, obviously. We brought along climbing rope, a hunting knife, sleeping bags, sunscreen, and various other minor things, such as a camping stove. Along the way, I found a branch that I use, a straight branch that I use as a walking stick. Obviously, this was a long time ago. Our first 2 days went just fine. The third day, however, we got lost. We knew where we were based on the topographical map and the compass. The trail was somewhere above us on the ridgeline. We reasoned all we had to do was climb up the hill, and we'd eventually reach the trail, right? Makes sense. However, between where we were and the top of and where the trail should be was a lot of low brush, and we weren't sure about it. After testing it for its strength, we found that it would support our weight. So over the next 20 or 30 minutes, we proceeded to crawl over this brush with our heavy backpacks swaying. We were very nervous because one false move and our foot would fall through the brush and land on the ground 2 to 3 feet below. And it could be very, very dangerous. We eventually reached the top. Yay! And we found the trail. Every morning, we would scramble out of our backpacks to the cold morning air and take a shot of rum. Now, I don't drink, but it was just enough to warm me up. The day would go by every day, and one of the things that we would do is to make our meals is we would heat up water on our camping stove, pour in the contents of a dehydrated meal, and cook it. Some of the meals were actually quite tasty. We had meals such as chicken pasta casserole and vegetables and rice. They even had desserts such as apple pie. One day, we caught and ate fish. Lack of food was never an issue. Another adventure we had was when we found ourselves in a dry riverbed, facing a 15-foot wall that we knew we had to get over to the top and continue on a trail. Well, there were no obvious handholds, so what we did was, one of us volunteered and turned out to be Christian, and he took the rope and walked way far around and got up to the top, tying the rope onto a tree. He let the rope dangle down to the bottom. Then we tied each backpack in turn, and he pulled it up to the top. Next, it was our turn. We tied the rope around ourselves, and half pulling us up, and ourselves half climbing, walking up the wall, we eventually reached the top. Remember the old Batman series on TV? Every so often, Batman and Robin would be seen walking up the side of a building. That was obviously fake. They were walking across a flat mock-up of a building. They just turned the camera on the side, and it looked real good, didn't it? What we looked like was what they were supposed to look like, but there was no camera trickery. We made it to the finish line, to the final destination, in the projected 5 days, and we all received our grade. The reason I remember this after all these years is because of all the fun that it was and all the emotions that were involved. Did you enjoy the adventure? Madam President.
We will have an indefinite amount of silence while all the judges